Hello and welcome to the Capitola Planning Commission. This meeting is open to the public with both in-person attendance at City of Capitola Council Chambers, 420 Capitola Avenue, and remote viewing is also possible. The Planning Commission and staff are attending in person, and members of the public wanting to offer public comment need to be present. The public can live stream the meeting on the city's website on YouTube or on Zoom following the link on the meeting agenda. As always, this meeting is cablecast live on Spectrum Communications Cable TV Channel 8 and AT&T UVerse Channel 99 and is being recorded to be rebroadcast on the following Mondays and Fridays at 1 p.m. on Spectrum Channel 71 and Spectrum Channel 25. A recording of the meeting will also be available on the city's website after the meeting. Our technician tonight is we didn't catch his name. Who's our technician tonight? It's okay. We'll catch up with that later. As a reminder, please turn off your cell phones during the meeting. Okay, so we'll do a roll call.
Commissioner Esty,
Here.
Commissioner Westman,
Here.
Commissioner Wilk,
Here.
Vice Chair Jensen,
Here.
Chair Christensen.
Here. All right, and then the Pledge of Allegiance. Item 2, additions and deletions to the agenda.
Staff received updated plans and an erratum notice regarding items 6A and 6B.
Thank you. Okay, item 3, oral communications. Members of the public may speak for up to 3 minutes unless otherwise specified by the chair. Individuals may not speak for more than once during oral communications. All speakers must address the entire legislative body and will not be permitted to engage in dialogue. Hello.
Hi, my name is Goran Klapic. I'm a former security guard of Zelda's on the beach. Way in the back, I worked with George, very nice guy at the front door security. What I want to bring up here is that there is a crisis sometimes here in Capitola with fentanyl and cocaine dealing, and that has been overwatched sometimes and not talked about. It's very serious because there are teenagers, they are 13, 14, or 15, and they are being offered to buy cocaine or something like that by drug dealers. I know that because I know a guy who is doing that intentionally. I had a talk with Andrew Daly, who was the police chief, and fortunately now I'm really happy about it. Sarah Ryan is taking over the police department. I hope things will change very soon for the better. Thank you very much for listening. Take care.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak? Hearing none. Moving on to item 4, Planning Commission or staff comments. Are there any?
I've got some comments, if you don't mind. Thank you, Chairwoman. I have 3 comments, actually. So I have a request for staff, actually, to perhaps bring something forward to the next Planning Commission. And I've been thinking about something Commissioner Westman said at our last meeting, and there was a comment towards the end about the Planning Commission should be able to prohibit ugly buildings. And I thought, oh gosh, no, I object to that. But then I thought about it, and of course, whatever you say is worth thinking about. And I agree that we should be able to prohibit ugly buildings, but we need objective criteria. So we already have some. We already have requirements or a suggestion that height be determined by plate height, so to allow for pitched roofs. So we're encouraging pitched roofs. We also have requirements limiting large blank walls, so that we favor articulated people-sized facades. So we can put in objective criteria. And I would have requested staff ask the next Planning Commission if they would be interested in creating more architectural style requirements that would help define exactly what the quaint, small-town feel of our city is. It's not an impossible task. I recall that the city of Rancho Palos Verdes Estates once required all buildings have red tile roofs. So we don't need to be that specific, or maybe we do, but we could disallow certain architectural styles, Bauhaus, Brutalist, Victorian, whatever the community feels. But to do this, and here's where with the planning commission they might not want to get involved, to do this properly, you'd need to find out what exactly the community does feel is acceptable. And so there would have to be detailed survey and find out, whether or not the public even would want to tackle this issue. But yes, I believe that it's important that Capitola have beautiful buildings, but I don't want the planning commission, 3 planning commissioners, to be the ones who decide that, right? 3 out of 5, it's too random. It's government by fiat. So the commission needs guidance, and I hope staff will consider that request and perhaps work on this issue. Because it comes up all the time, so that the next planning commission does have some guidance. Secondly, this is the last meeting of this commission, and as a parting comment, I'd like to review what I've tried to advocate over the last 6 years. And I like to view an application from the applicant's viewpoint. For the most part, these people are coming forward and bringing us their dreams, and I want to be receptive to that wherever possible. I've been an applicant standing in front of this Spanish Inquisition, and it's not fun. I think the commission should help guide the applicant through the application process and not be antagonistic. This starts by having a complete, thorough, specific set of municipal guidelines that remove ambiguity and set the applicant's expectations. That's important. Have the applicant have their expectations set so that they know what they're in for. I've worked to help create such a municipal code since even before I was commissioner. But as you all know, our municipal code is still very, very far from a perfect document. And as a commissioner, I would rather look at the intent of the code rather than the letter of the law. And as a result, I tended to look for reasons to grant exceptions and reasonable deviations from code when they apply. I've also tried to prevent the Planning Commission from overreaching our authority, inserting requirements that cannot really be justified by code. I've also looked into what are often considered boilerplate conditions that the staff routinely applies as an approved recommendation, and remove or question or modify those that don't apply. So I've tried to be a fair-minded city representative that doesn't overburden citizens who are just trying to get through this red tape. And I think it's important that we have the right attitude towards welcoming them to our community. Lastly, I'd like to thank you, Commissioners Jensen, Esty, Christensen, and Westman, for listening to my arguments and giving them due consideration. I think we've worked well as a team. The fact that we have different backgrounds, different viewpoints, and that different focuses actually works to the city's advantage. Our discussions have made sure that items before us are thoroughly investigated from all sides. And as a result, despite our differences, we usually come to a unanimous decision. So thank you, commissioners, and thank you, staff. It has been an honor and a pleasure to work with you. Happy holidays and all the best in the coming year.
Thank you, Peter. Anybody else? It's been a pleasure to work with you too, Commissioner. Anybody else any comments?
Yeah, I went, just to follow up on what Mr. Wilk said, I appreciated work with the whole planning commission the last 2 years. It's meant a lot to me. And I won't be here next year, but I think a lot of you have applied and stuff and might be on here, and I wish all the best. And but I've learned a lot from each one of you. I think, as Peter reflected, we all have different backgrounds, and I think that's what makes our planning commission unique and dynamic, is that we all have different perspectives on that. And I appreciate the guidance that staff has provided, everything, and especially to our chair, Courtney. Thank you. Last year was a very, I think, difficult year, and I think you really excelled at keeping large amounts of people that came here in a very professional way of conducting a meeting. And I just wanted to thank you for that leadership too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any comments?
During the director's report, I've got a presentation like looking back over the year, so I'll save that for the director's report. I do have a couple kind of public announcements that I'd like to share now while there's people in the room. The first is that the on-ramp is expected to open by the end of the year. So that's exciting for Highway 1. And the second is that we issued a tree permit for the trees along Park Avenue. There were 2 different tree permits that we approved for many trees. And the work for those are going to start, it's going to start at the end of next week and then into the following week along Park Avenue. So Park Avenue will close between 8:30 a.m. and 4 p.m. And just reopen for the heavy traffic hours. But in order to get those really high-risk trees out of the way before the winter storms. So it's really critical that we do this now. It's the trees that are really in danger of falling. So I just wanted to give you a heads up on that. And with that, that's all of my updates that the community should be aware of at this time. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll say it again. I think I said it before. When they close Park, are they going to do something around the middle school, especially during the hours when the kids are coming out of school at roughly 2 to 3 o'clock in the afternoon?
I will.
That's where everybody's going to end up going down.
I'm sure that the police department and public works are coordinating on mitigation during that time.
Okay,
But I'll talk with the director tomorrow.
thanks.
Anybody else? Okay, moving on to item 5 is the consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered by the Planning Commission to be routine and will be enacted by one motion in the form listed below. There will be no separate discussion on these items prior to the time the Planning Commission votes on the actions unless the Planning Commission requests specific items to be discussed for separate review. Items pulled for separate discussion will be considered in the order listed on the agenda. Anybody?
I'll move approval of the consent calendar.
Before we get there, one minor point. I wasn't here for October 3rd, so I can't approve it. So
Okay, we'll
just
do.
note in the minutes that,
We should take
You
2
wanna split?
separate motions and you'll
Motions?
recuse from one.
okay.
That was item, which one?
I had a,
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion that we approve item B, approval of the October 3rd, 2024 Planning Commission minutes.
I will second.
First and a second.
and I'll recuse myself from the vote.
Commissioner Westman,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilk,
Aye.
Vice Chair Jensen,
Aye.
Chair Christensen.
Aye. Okay, and then moving on to the items A and C.
I move approval of consent calendar item A
And not C.
and C, yes.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have first and a second. Roll call.
Commissioner Estee,
Aye.
Commissioner Westman,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilk,
Aye.
Vice Chair Jensen,
Aye.
Chair Christensen.
Aye. Okay. Moving on. Item 6 are public hearings. Public hearings are intended to provide an opportunity for public discussion of each item listed in the public hearing. The following procedure is as follows. It's first, the staff presentation, second, planning commission questions, third, public comment, fourth, planning commission deliberations, and 5, decision. Item A is 4825 Opal Street. We have a staff report.
Thank you, and good evening. So we have actually 2 applications that are going to be back-to-back. They are adjacent to each other with the same owner and applicant. So what I think we'll do is have a more robust first presentation because these projects are so similar, and we'll go a little faster through the second one. And of course, if you have any questions on any of it, we can go back to it. All right, so the first application is for 4825 Opal Street. It's on the left-hand side of those 2 lots. This includes a design permit, coastal permit, and ADU permit, and is in the R1 zone. This is the site as it appears today. You're actually looking at a double lot here as the existing dwelling straddles both properties. this is the proposed landscape from one. We'll now just be looking at that single lot on the left. So this is the proposed landscape for the development. They are removing several existing lesser trees, but their project includes a preservation plan for the mature fir tree in the back, and that tree, as well as a couple shrub tree plantings in the front. And with that, they'll meet their canopy coverage goals, and that tree is already well into maturity. So, and we have the elevations of this project. This is a combined single-family dwelling and ADU. It's all attached. Both units have a living area on the first and second story. And it utilizes stucco gabled roof with clay tile and is accented with arched door and windows and a faux balcony over the front entry. This is the first story floor plan. The ADU is located towards the rear of the lot. And again, it's a straight up and down on first and second story. This is the second floor. Okay, so in the staff report, we covered in a greater breadth the details behind how the ADU, both laws and zoning code work, with especially in consideration with the current conflicts between our code and state law as that's changed, as well as how this ties into the Coastal Act and our certified LCP. I think this is a bit of an evolving landscape, at least as we've been getting some legal guidance and some of the court cases that have been coming up. So we did seek legal guidance on this application. Their proposal does meet some, not all, of the limited standards that are up there, and we have different responses for those. It is consistent with what's in the staff report. But just as a bit of a preamble, the limited standards ADUs are ADUs that are, as it sounds, subject to limited standards, shown there, the 4-foot rear and side setbacks, up to 16 feet in height, and up to 800 square feet in size. As it stands, state law is still consistent with the first and the third one of those, but the allowances for height has changed, and local agencies are now obligated to allow ADUs with a wider breadth of configuration, namely taller ADUs, 2-story ADUs, which is what the application includes. So we did seek legal guidance on this matter, and the response we have, and in turn the recommendation we're making to the Planning Commission, is that provided the other standards are met and that the height limitation meets state law, that we recommend support of the ADU portion of the project. So I'll just go through that now. And I want to note that the guaranteed allowance, which is what this is pivotal in this application and the next one, because they're proposing limited standards ADU to go over the FAR. So it is a pivotal component of this project meeting code. So we'll go to the first one. Again, the 4-foot rear and side setbacks, this project does comply for its ADU. The second one is the 16 feet in height. Again, I just covered that in the previous slide, but there have been a number of changes at the state level, as well as a couple court cases that have changed what takes priority and precedence with respect to local law, state ADU law, and the Coastal Act. And so for this purpose, even though they are proposing an ADU that's over 23 feet in height, one of the new standards and tolerances by state law is that an ADU that is attached may be up to 25 feet in height, or whatever the zoned height limit is for the primary dwelling. This is in the R1. The zoned height limit is 25 feet. And again, this ADU is attached and under 25 feet, so it does meet the state standard. And then for 800 square feet, there has been some disagreement between staff and the applicant as to the measurements, but staff's measurement that this ADU exceeds 800 square feet as proposed and is actually about 831 square feet and would need to be reduced for eligibility with a guaranteed allowance. So the project has been conditioned to address this inconsistency. But we did want to add that, as you may have seen with the additional materials that were published earlier today, then those materials relate to this application. We did have some discussion with the applicant and staff and recalculated the floor area of the projects with respect to the stairway exemption. The result was it did reduce the size of the primary dwellings on each by 30 square feet. It has a slightly different impact on both projects, so we'll go through that in the following slides. So I can come back to this table if you'd like, but it just is a comparison to be as simplistic as we can be with the numbers in bold, are the significant ones, of how that has changed the project totals. And we are recommending some modified language for 2 of the conditions. So we've got that here drafted if, when it comes time to make a motion that the Planning Commission can consider them. And I'll go back to that previous slide because the primary dwelling is now under the floor area ratio max, but the ADU is still over it, and it's about an equal difference. We are suggesting that the Planning Commission, even though I think it does work as drafted, it might be clearer that in the language for condition number 2 that it say that square footage can be shifted to effectively increase the size of the primary dwelling, reduce the size of the ADU, and bring both into compliance with the maximum FAR and the guaranteed allowance. And then the second recommendation for modifying the conditions is condition number 13, and this is just a cleanup item when the conditions were moved around to have the appropriate reference. So condition number 13 should be referencing condition number 9. So we're recommending that change as well. And with that, staff is recommending approval of the project with the proposed, the drafted conditions as well as the proposed modifications to conditions 9 and 13, or 2 and 13, sorry.
Thank you. Have any questions? Yes.
So,
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. Can the conversation, it's just really distracting. We can hear everything. It's okay. Thank you.
Question. So the allowable ADU is 800 square feet, and it's 831 now. But before it was like, okay, you can't move that 31 feet over to the primary dwelling, but now you can. I don't quite follow the argument. Could you just
Yeah, we can go back to that.
one more time?
So, and I think I do have a hidden slide that I can pull up if you want to see it, but we did, in speaking with the applicant, looking at how there are some minor exemptions to floor area, and they're shown in that FAR diagram. We did recalculate it with regards to the stairway and the effect
The ADU or the primary dwelling?
on the primary dwelling.
Okay, so the primary dwelling actually has a smaller FAR than
Correct.
you originally calculated.
That was the result.
But the ADU still is 831.
Correct.
And we've got a requirement, or at least we can enforce a requirement, that the maximum ADU is 800.
In order to exceed the FAR, the ADU cannot exceed 800 square feet. ADUs can be larger than 800 square feet, but then they become subject to the maximum FAR.
So as planning commissioners, we could prohibit this based on just the fact that the ADU is exceeding 800.
As proposed, it would not be permissible to approve it without that modification. So yes, but we're recommending that be a condition so that they can.
And so your condition is because they've recalculated the primary dwelling floor area ratio, you just say, well, okay, the total is less. And so you're just moving that over.
Yeah, it's just clarifying that is an option that they could do. They could alternatively just reduce the size of the ADU by 31 square feet. So they could, pull back a wall somewhere. that would achieve the goal too, but it might be more desirable for them to simply move some of the internal walls, not change the effective size of it today, but not exceed what's allowed for the ADU. It might be a preferable outcome.
Just to add, so you are clear, when we recalculated the primary home, the ADU calculation went down by about 30 square feet, and they're 31 square feet over in the ADU, so they could, the condition we wrote it so that they could shift that square footage into the primary home to bring it into compliance. So that wouldn't affect the exterior of the home at all, and it would just be an internal fix. But
It sounds like they just didn't want to do it before tonight's meeting, or there's just a condition of approval to move forward and to to get it. That's right.
that's correct.
So I guess my question is really involved around the total square footage and the massing and the fact that, with these ADU requirements, suddenly we're building bigger and bigger, buildings on these lots. So by requiring that the ADU be only 800 square feet, we effectively don't decrease the size of the total building, right? I mean, if we stuck it to them basically and said, no, you got to be 800 square feet at the ADU, they could just say, okay, well, I still have allowance on the primary dwelling, so if our goal was simply to try to make smaller houses, that being that fastidious wouldn't achieve that goal. Okay.
I have a question. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
So how's it going to be adjusted? So is the applicant going to internally adjust the wall in the ADU to become smaller so that the main house gets larger?
Correct. Yeah, so what the condition is that at the time of the building permit, the ADU would have to comply with the 800 max, and then the 31 square feet from the ADU can shift over to the primary house.
I was just getting confused, like when you're saying shifting, but it's physically going to be at 800 square feet or less, and the house will be can be 30 square feet bigger because of a calculation that you guys have worked through. But the physical structure of the house will meet
The maximum FA.
will mean that, right? And just the timing of this is just based around this is like an ongoing. Like it seems like a lot of times we're not. My 2 years being here, I've been in the process of designing and moving walls at the same time when we're up here, and so I was just wondering if you could give us a background on that.
So typically, as we go through the process with an applicant and we ask for changes, in this scenario, we said we'll need an application for a variance or a deviation in order to move forward with this project. Or like the options are denial or move forward with variance and deviations, and typically an applicant would either provide you that updated application that complies with your code or not. But in this scenario, and the applicant asked to move forward for hearing, just being in disagreement with staff's interpretation of the code and where there's an ADU and housing involved and a lot of, so at that point we said, we'll move you forward for hearing with conditions that it be brought into compliance at building stage. This is not typical. Most applicants do update before it gets to planning commission so that we move forward with a compliant application. So
Thank you.
this was the request of the applicant.
So I'm making the assumption that this new plan we got, that staff has had discussions with the applicant, and this kind of approach works for them.
So we updated the errata today, and we spoke with the applicant's architect late yesterday. And after receiving comments, came to a conclusion that the landings within the staircase should be included in the exception. So that's where the 30 square feet comes from. So I don't think we've directly heard from the applicant on whether or not this solution of moving the wall, if they're accepting that, but that's the condition that we've drafted this evening. So maybe when we open the public hearing, the applicant can comment on that.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions?
No, that was my question. Whether we talked to the applicant. Thank you.
All right, so now we'll open the public hearing. Anybody like to speak?
Good evening, Cove Britton, Matson Britton Architects. First, I want to say I really appreciate that Sean and Katie worked with me on this stuff. We are working with really fluid legislation, particularly with ADUs, and exactly what it's saying and what exactly it's allowing is, difficult to track down. But we were able to come to agreement on that. I had some difference of opinion, friendly difference of opinion from them on how they were measuring some things. And what they provided today, I go, well, that works. But when you have a difference of opinion sometimes, I find it best to bring it to the Planning Commission, just to go, look, I think this is the way it should be. And it's respectful to them, but like going, I think the way you're measuring it isn't respectfully correct. And we worked it out. So at this point, whether we shift 34 feet to the main house, it's a very simple thing. You wouldn't see it from outside. Whether we eliminate the walk-in closet upstairs, if the ADU doesn't need a walk-in closet, we hit the number. So they're very simple. I mean, we're down to 31 feet, and I measure things slightly different than staff does, but I'm not going to fall on my sword over 31 feet. So it's really simple stuff. It got much better today. Not much better, but more significant. So at this point, it's very simple to resolve this issue that visually probably would have no difference to anybody. And the house will overall, toward Commissioner Wilkes, it's going to be the same size. It's just where I put some square footage in one place, I go put it to another place. And again, I understand the concern about the ADU stuff, but it is part of my job to follow those rules. And that's what I did as best as I could, but they were great working with on the issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anybody else like to speak to this project? Hearing none, we're going to close the public hearing and bring it back for deliberation for the commission.
Chair Christensen, can I clarify something? Just with the statements that were just made, the 31 square feet definitely needs to come out of the ADU because in order to get the guaranteed allowance, state law says you have to have a minimum of 800. Our code allows a maximum of 800, so we're right at that 800. The project cannot come in with an ADU that's over 800 square feet. So I think the architect was suggesting that maybe it could come out of a closet within the primary house, and that would not resolve this issue. The 31 square feet definitely has to come out of the ADU. So just to be clear. And
I was, sorry, excuse me. I was referring to the ADU's closet.
okay, perfect.
Thank you very much. Okay, that's understood.
Well, I'll start. First of all, I'd like to compliment the architect. I think the design of both these houses, both of them are quite nice and fit well into the neighborhood and are going to be quality homes in our town for a long time. It sounds like that staff and the applicant have come to a good resolution for solving the floor area ratio problems. So I think that I'm in favor of approving this project at this point, but I'll hear from my other commissioners.
Yeah, I think once we work through the math on the getting down to the 800 square feet on the ADU, it certainly would, before this project, and we need as many ADUs as we can get in, Capitola because of our housing problem. So it looks like, the solution that staff's worked on this with the architect should be fine.
Anybody else? I'm in agreement. Do we have a motion?
I move approval of this item with staff recommendations.
I'll second that.
First and a second. Roll call.
Just to clarify really quick, is that with the recommended modifications that we had in highlighted?
Yes.
Yes.
Commissioner Estee,
Aye.
Commissioner Westman,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilk,
Aye.
Vice Chair Jensen.
Aye.
Chair Christensen.
Aye. Motion passes. All right, moving on. Thank you, everyone. Moving on to 4855 Opal Street. Do you have a presentation for this one?
Yes, we do. All right. So look quite familiar, so I think I'm going to skip through some of these slides a little quickly, except for where they differ just a little bit. So again, this is a design permit, coastal permit, and ADU permit in the R1 zone to build a primary, to also demolish the same structures and construct a new dwelling and attached ADU. The landscape plan is slightly different in that they don't have a substantial mature tree on the site. They are proposing to remove, similarly, a couple lesser trees, which are going to either overlap with the new building footprint or be in close proximity to it. So they're proposing to remove those trees and plant a ornamental pistache tree and a redbud, a forest redbud, I believe. And those would secure the 15% canopy coverage goals at maturity. So that's good. And then one in the rear, one in the back. These are the proposed elevations. They mainly differ in that the previous one was I considered a Spanish revival. I defer to Co on that though, and this one is more of a craftsman style. And again, the floor plans are going to look almost identical compared to the prior application. These are nearly mirror projects with some deviations in the front elevation. And the topic of the ADU, similarly, is going to be the same with respect to the ADU. It's designed with the same shape and footprint and overall size. So our recommendations in regard to the ADU are going to be the same. It's still an 831 square foot ADU. We're recommending that be addressed. And similar to the last application, we did recalc the figures here because it has the same circumstance with the staircase. It had the same result of reducing the primary dwelling size by 30 square feet. However, the upper floor is designed a little bit differently than the previous application. And even with that reduction, the project is still just over the FAR, literally by a few square feet. But what that does mean is that the ADU size of 831 square feet, it can't be addressed just by shifting an internal wall, and that they would need to reduce the project total size by 35 square feet, and at least 31 square feet would need to come from the ADU. So it's a little more involved than the prior one. We have some similar conditions that were, or modifications to the conditions that we are recommending and have drafted. Before I get to that, I'll just show you this is the similar table before. The numbers are close to the last one, but again, a little different. And we have the corrections here. So I'm showing this would still need to reduce the project size as had been drafted in the report, but it is 30 square feet less. And the same clarification on condition number 13. So with that, we recommend that the Planning Commission approve the project with the conditions, including the highlighted modifications to what was in the staff report.
Great, thank you. Commission have any questions? Nope, nothing? Okay.
So Max, maybe I'm now confused. The way we wrote the ordinance is you can exceed the max FAR as long as your ADU is 800 square feet. Correct? And
sorry about that. I can pull up the guaranteed allowance language. I have that on a slide here.
Yeah, let's,
What
we should look at that because they're over by square feet. They'll be over by 4 feet on that 50, right?
But in this case, reducing would not mean shifting internal walls. It would mean shrinking the ADU.
Oh, sorry, mic's not on. So if they shrunk the ADU from 831 to 800 square feet, you're still not happy because the main house, the primary residence, is still 56.2%. It's not 56.0. They have to reduce another 4 feet. Is that what you're saying?
No?
So I will say that when we review applications in general for floor area ratio, we'll usually allow up to about 10 square feet of deviation because of measurements and scale.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was.
So I think what we're suggesting here is that the 31 square feet be removed from the building entirely, but we're not worried about the 4 square feet with the primary dwelling, the way the condition's written.
Well,
Or-
I think the conditions show it.
Oh,
I think we're open to that, but because of the lateness of these recalculations, when it was pretty exacting with showing it there, we kind of omitted any consideration of rounding as
Yeah,
we
sure.
might have in a typical plan check because this came out as an errata. It's the straight numbers.
right, but 31 square feet needs to come out of the ADU, not the primary dwelling,
That's correct.
right?
mhm.
And then the primary dwelling at 1841 versus 1837, we're probably okay with that.
If you're okay with it, we're okay with it.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Yep.
it's X%.
We usually allow up to 10 square feet.
That's what I thought. I thought there was a little bit of leeway on.
I think it could be considered a rounding figure, and we could.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah. So we're opening the public hearing.
Thanks to staff, and we'll take the 31 feet out of the walk-in closet.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else? Okay, closing the public hearing. Any deliberation? Do we have a motion?
Just to be devil's advocate here about the 4 feet. If we in fact were, again, going to be sticklers about having, massing, it was just something you always wanted defined. But this because of these ADUs, where these buildings are getting too big, we could just say, look, we're going to hold a strong line on them. And 4 feet is 4 feet. You want to have smaller buildings, and that's our statement. Just throwing that out there, but I don't really believe it. So, just wondered if anybody else would jump on board with that.
So I'll make a motion to approve application 240149 at 855 Opal Street with the modified conditions provided by staff.
Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Estee,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilk, pardon, Westman,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilk,
Aye.
Vice Chair Jensen,
Aye.
Chair Christensen.
Aye. All right, approved. Thank you very much. All right, moving on to item C is 709 Riverview Drive, application 240429. To the staff.
Madam Chair, staff has recommended I recuse myself from this item,
Okay,
so I will take the recommendation.
all right, thank you.
I'm just going to take this opportunity briefly to remind everyone to speak into their microphone. Some of the comments tonight have been cut off, and I want to make sure everyone can hear everything you guys are saying forever.
Thanks, Julia. Forever. Okay.
Just a moment, I'm opening the show. Okay. Well, good evening, Chair Christensen and Commissioners. I've got a presentation for 709 Riverview. This is a proposed new residence. It comes with it a request for a design permit. It is in the coastal zone, so it's subject to a coastal development permit. There's an internal ADU with the proposed new residence, and the heaviest subject matter with this project is a proposed tree removal. So there will be quite a bit of analysis in the back half of the slideshow on that. But off the top, I'll discuss the proposed development. Lot size is 5367 square feet, mid-block location, Upper Riverview Drive. The existing home is a 2-bed, 1-bath built in 1952 and is pretty visibly, obviously, at the end of its useful life, and it's got an attached garage. I'll also note at the outset that the owner and the owner's designer really approached this with an eye toward complying with all measurable development standards, and the project does. But back to existing conditions, we've got street views of the 1952 modest existing home here, and then you can see the tree that is at the southwest point in the rear yard of the existing residence. It's a relatively large Monterey cypress tree proposed for removal. So just getting into the site plan, the red is the property boundary. I've got some sequencing here to just walk you through the proposed footprint. So the gray is the driveway. The purple is the single-story footprint. And then the darker purple is the upper floor recessed from the building line of the first floor. And then parking lays out with 2 in the driveway, 1 in the garage. And then the ADU is at the front of the building. It's an internal ADU, 363 square feet. Just zooming in on some floor plans for additional details, single car garage, living room, dining, kitchen, and the ADU on the first floor. And then the upper floor is the bedroom floor and has an exterior deck off of the master bedroom as shown. And then here's our representative elevations. So we've got 2 different cladding types, horizontal lap type siding on the first floor, and then a board and batten style on the upper. The building has a cupola over the stairway, which will provide some natural light. There's a provision in the ordinance that allows a bit of a few feet of overage for an architectural element like this. So again, it's all compliant with the height standards. So I'm going to pivot here just because the residence entirely complies with all development standards. So I'll get into the analysis that went into the tree removal proposal. So again, we're looking at the lot, and I've got some sequencing to kind of describe what went into the analysis here. So we're looking at this footprint of the tree, and again, the lot is 5,367 square feet. The footprint of this tree, where it is on the lot, and by footprint I mean canopy, is about 1,900 square feet. And then we overlaid the buildable area. So this is where you could actually site buildings, excluding setbacks. And the little jog in the front is to allow for a 20-foot driveway. So you would assume your garage would need some additional setbacks. So that footprint is 27 and 20 square feet. And so then looking at what is the canopy within that buildable envelope is 1,550. So it's about 56% of that buildable area. And then if you look at the white area around the darker green and then inside the blue dash line, you've got a remainder of about 1,200 square feet to site your building. And then really gaming it out, if you're going to drop a structure, a typical footprint of a structure with right angles, you're left with about 900, maybe 1,000 square feet to work with. So the the conclusion is pretty obvious. The tree is a major presence on this property, and really any conceivable redevelopment is going to likely be proposing removing of this tree. Pivoting to another aspect of this, I'm quoting a section of the tree ordinance here. So in evaluating this application, really the Planning Commission is not subject to any findings. It's really entirely at your discretion because this is paired with a development application. But looking into the ordinance, there is consideration given to solar orientation. And I mentioned that the tree is at the southwest corner of the lot. And so the entire rear yard and the rear facade of the building, as it stands, is nearly in the shade all day long. And I prepared a low-budget solar exhibit just to illustrate that. So on the upper left corner, this is at 10:30 a.m., and I've circled the sun. And then I've got an arrow showing the home. And then this is how the natural light comes through in the rear yard. And just the presence of the tree, there's not much natural light that gets through in the morning. And then we did the same routine in the evening or in the afternoon, 2:30 p.m. And again, just a few rays of sun get through the tree. So the tree is a pretty strong impact, if not almost total, on solar access for this property as well. So some other considerations, obviously the tree is just very large, about a 60-foot wide spread, and really dominates the core of the property in the development area, or the developable area. Any conceivable development is really would need to make a beyond some kind of mitigation. It's really a matter of almost compromise the developability of the property if you were to try to work around this tree. There's also a case of practicality when you overlap the tree's expected lifespan. So the owner had an arborist report, and they estimate the tree is 50 to 60 years old, and these trees typically live about 100 years. So we're looking at about 30 to 50 years left for the tree, and with a new residence, you're expecting a useful life of 50 to 100 years. So it would seem prudent to look at getting a new landscape plan and dealing with removing of that tree in the same step as the redevelopment of the property. And then the last point here is that the owner has acknowledged and putting the best foot forward that this is a large tree and it probably deserves some more substantial mitigation than usual. And so they're proposing 3 24-inch box trees that would total 30% canopy coverage at maturity, which is the upper end of our tree ordinance's standard for canopy coverage. So some of that came in a little bit after the staff report was written in terms of just coming to a final understanding on what the proposed mitigation was. So I'm adding a condition this evening, and this was run through my interaction with the applicant. So I believe we have their buy-in on this condition, but it just specifies that they can select 3 24-inch box trees with an expectation of a 20-foot diameter canopy. And they do this in the step of developing their building permit plans. So with that, we are recommending approval, and I believe the applicant is here and will probably have a few words in a presentation, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you. I always look at you, Susan. I'm sorry. But do you have any questions?
You talked about the canopy size. Is the root size the same diameter roughly or area as a canopy?
Yeah, that's the typical, is the critical root zone is going to follow the canopy pretty close for most trees.
Okay, so there's no way you could do a foundation in that, anywhere underneath that green zone you've got.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? No? Okay, we'll open the public hearing. Would anybody like to speak?
My name is Brad Sokomo. I'm the owner of the project. Thanks for hearing from me tonight. And just quickly, thanks to the staff who's worked with me during this process. They've been super helpful and super friendly, and just sometimes you don't expect that from working with government, but they've been absolutely fantastic. I don't have a whole lot to add, other than just to say I've done a couple projects in a couple different municipalities. I typically try to stay within all the rules that are required so I can avoid planning commission meetings. Nothing against you guys. But I do want to point out, as Brian did, or sorry, Sean. Sean pointed out that I am complying with everything that's been asked of me, and I'm not asking for any other variances. I'm also agreeing to a canopy that will be twice what you recommend, just because I know the loss of a big tree like that is a big deal. I don't want to lose it. I would much rather keep it. But the reason I am at the Planning Commission is because I just feel it's just an impedance to what needs to be done at the project to make it a successful project. So I would also want to point out that we would like to put solar on the roof, and removing the tree is going to allow us to be able to have southern exposure that will create the maximum amount of solar power production possible. And then finally, just to appeal to the fact that I am, as the property owner, this is a tree in my property. I'm going to be responsible for whatever it does to myself or my neighbor or anyone who might be around it. So it's just sort of appeal to my rights as a property owner to just want to be able to because I'm going to be liable for it, to have the ability to do with that tree what needs to be done in order to keep everyone safe and be reasonable. I feel like I'm hopefully taking a reasonable approach. And that's about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, honorable members of the Planning Commission. And again, we thank staff for the cooperation with Brian and putting this thing through the process. And we explored a couple different avenues of building around the tree. It just logistically does not work. And with the requirements. But what we did do is we designed a house here that meets every one of your codes. Every one. From size to setbacks to height. We intentionally wanted to stay within that parameter that the city has set. We set this, and if you look along the riparian corridor there, and I can almost assure you that there's never been a house built along there that hasn't removed trees, because that was a heavily wooded area for many years. Probably only the Indians knew of how thick it was, but that was a nesting area for them too, as well as it is for birds. We're being respectful to the riparian corridor. We're being respectful to the adjacent environment that's there, and we think this is a good project for that neighborhood. Also with us tonight is the immediate neighbor whose canopy is affecting his house, and as you can see, if you saw the tree, the structure of it is to a point where you're going to start losing limbs off the side. In other words, it will start falling from the sides. That's what trees do after they spread out like that. And so there's a danger element there. And that we're proposing, as presented by Brian, that we're going to bring back a 30% canopy within our lifetime. So we're planting 3 trees. We actually have 2 on the property now. The oak tree in the back and then 1 tree in the front will stay. They're in the landscape plan. And so we played by the rules, and we just need to have the permission to remove this tree, and we will put it in a good place. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Good evening. I'm Mario Beltramo. I'm the neighbor that Mr. Norton just spoke about. I'm very much in favor of the application, the applicant, and this proposal. I think I'm very blessed, frankly, for 2 reasons, well, for many reasons. But with respect to this proposal, I'm blessed by the fact that I think Brad's going to be an excellent neighbor. I'm very happy that he's chosen Dennis, whose designs I've seen before and I've always admired, and I think will blend in very well with the neighborhood and will improve the neighborhood as I hope my house has. And as Mr. Norton has pointed out, I'm very concerned with, and I spoke about this before, the canopy, which has just grown to such an extent that it's not only shading my backyard and my house, but its branches are literally hung over a significant portion of the roof of my house. And we have had instances in the past where branches have broken out from this tree, thankfully not falling onto my house. But I'm very significantly concerned with that should this tree remain, not just for my own safety and my wife's safety, but now significantly for the safety of our 11 grandchildren who visit us with regularity and who I'm concerned with. They play in the backyard and they're in our house, of course. So the safety aspect of this, as well as the beautification aspect, are important to me. And so that's why I would speak in favor of this. Thank you very much. I think, by the way, it was an excellent analysis and a very thorough one that's been done. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else like to speak? Nope. Okay, closing the public hearing, and we'll bring it back to the commission for deliberation. You
want me to start?
If you'd like to.
Well, first of all, I have no difficulty with approving the tree removal permit as part of this application. I think it's pretty clear that to build a reasonable size house on this lot, that the tree has to go away. I will bring up, and I think it's a nice looking building. It conforms to all our standards, so I don't have any problem with that. Since Commissioner Wilkes is not here because he had to recuse himself to complain about the conditions being attached to the project, I'll complain about one of them for him. I do think condition number 16, which states that there's a very limited time that they can remove the tree. And if they don't remove the tree, then they have to bring in a biologist and do this study on the tree. And for me, this is one tree being removed. It's not in an environmentally sensitive habitat or any other restricted district. So for me, I would like to see us eliminate condition number 16 because it's really not a requirement for where this tree is located, and simply have a condition that the tree doesn't get removed until they have a building permit to build the house, because we're issuing the building permit, the tree removal based on the fact that it needs to go away because of the design of the property. So other than that, I'm looking forward to seeing the project move forward.
Yeah, I agree. I think the trees just, it's practically, it's got to go. And I don't see any real issue with that. And 16, the wording in 16, I was worrying about this too. It came from somewhere, right? Is this a state standard, or where is this language coming from?
Yeah, this is a condition that we've put on a few of the larger projects that are removing multiple trees. The reason we added it is just its proximity to the creek and the potential for it being large and having nesting birds. So it's an abundance of caution. That's why it was included.
Can I ask the applicants or actually the neighbor if you've ever seen birds in the tree? Nests? Yeah, that's too. I would be in favor of removing that as well. They're not going to get the building permit before January 31st.
Right. So that would put them, they wouldn't be able to really start their project until September unless they spent a lot of money hiring a biologist and had them come in and look at the tree. And I think it's, as staff said, I've seen this condition put on if someone was going to take out 10 or 12 trees because, it was a bigger project. And at that point along the riparian corridor, that could be significant. But I don't think this one tree creates an environmental issue.
Agreed. Anything else? Is anybody ready to make a motion? Or
Well, I'll move that we approve this project with the recommendation that condition number 16 be removed.
And can we add in there a condition that the tree removal permit won't be issued until the building permit's issued?
Okay, sure, yeah.
And the additional condition that staff wanted about the landscaping they showed us.
Oh, okay.
With that, I'll second it.
Thank you.
the first and a second, roll call.
Commissioner Estee,
Aye.
Commissioner Westman,
Aye.
Vice Chair Jensen.
Aye.
Chair Christensen.
Aye. It's approved. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item D, which is chapter 1212, Community Tree and Forest Management.
We'll bring back in Commissioner Wilk.
Oh yeah, Peter.
Okay, welcome back, Commissioner Wilk. Tonight before you is a discussion on Chapter 12.12, the Community Tree and Forest Management chapter. This was originally adopted in 2004 and then amended in 2011, and it has not been amended since, so it's been a while. Commissioner Wilk requested at a previous meeting that we have a discussion on this chapter and specific to tree removals. Next slide, please. There's two ways in which you can remove a tree in Capitola. The first is based on circumstances related to the tree. So the health or condition of the tree, if they have a disease or danger of falling. The second is safety considerations. So quite a few trees we've removed due to safety considerations, trip hazards, when it's uprooting within a sidewalk. And the third is situations where the tree has caused or potential to cause unreasonable property damage or interference with existing utility services. So we've had quite a number of those types of circumstances within Capitola as well. Next slide, please. And the second way in which you can remove a tree in Capitola is with a development proposal, as we just saw. And this is to the discretion of the Planning Commission to approve or deny. And as shown in our last application, some of the considerations that the Planning Commission evaluates are canopy coverage, proposed landscape, development plans, age of the tree, the useful lifespan of the existing or proposed structures, best arboriculture practices, and then the outcome for the project and the community. So I left this at a very high level so that just based on the request, and I think from there, Chair, I will let you take it from there, and thank you. And you each have a copy of the full ordinance at your seats for reference, printed off, and that's all I've got.
Do we have any questions to start us off? No questions, Mr. Commissioner? All right. Are we going through the public hearing?
This is just a work item. It was, I know, just to provide the opportunity for comments on the ordinance. We've had on our list, there's definitely been requests over the years to amend the ordinance. It just has not been a priority because of other priorities in our small staff.
So these comments will be then taken and forwarded to a future date of Planning Commission to evaluate them?
So these comments, I will definitely, they'll be reflected in the minutes, as well as I'll be taking more in-depth notes, and they'll be in the video. I'm going to be putting together a work plan for next year for Planning Commission, and whether or not the tree ordinance is a priority next year is up in the air. We have some big items with the mall, including additional height, relooking at objective standards for the mall. So there's There are quite a few things still due for our housing element implementation. So whether or not the tree ordinance is updated next year or beyond, but I'll definitely save them in a useful spot that they can be looked at any time. So
I have a few comments. You want to start? This was your item.
I'd be curious to hear your comments.
Okay. Well, I agree. I think the tree ordinance needs to be updated. It's been a long time, and I do clearly understand that we have other priorities that we have to move forward with before we get to the tree ordinance, because we do have to do the work items that are related to our housing element, and those are extremely important. But when the ordinance does get updated, there are a couple of things I would like to see this whole heritage tree program taken out, because the reality, it's been in there for 20-something years, and we really haven't designated any heritage trees. And so I think we need to be a little more realistic about staff time, what we can and what we can't do. I'd like to have an ordinance that works. I would also like to see something included in there that talks a little bit more about this tree fund that the city has, which seems to be getting a little larger. And I would like us to evaluate some way that we could use that money for trees that are on private property that the city deems they would like to save, because sometimes there's a significant tree and the homeowner wants to take it down. The arborist says, well, if you did this and this, the tree would be safe and you could keep it. And I think keeping some of these large trees is a huge benefit to our community. So perhaps we could figure out a way to provide some financial assistance so the homeowner could do the work on the tree, where the homeowner is satisfied with keeping the tree and the city benefits from having, a 40, 50-year-old tree that is already mature and already providing lots of oxygen to the area and places for birds to nest. For me, the process that people go through to, remove a tree because of the tree being diseased or it causing damage or that actually seems to work pretty well. A lot of people do get trees come in and get permits and remove trees. There were some large redwood trees sort of on the corner of Burlingame and Capitola that recently got removed because they were definitely, damaging the foundation of the property. So I think the city's been pretty flexible as far as allowing people to take out trees if there is a reason under our current criteria to do it. And the applicant always has, if they get denied, the opportunity to appeal it to the Planning Commission. And if they don't like what the Planning Commission does, then it can go on to the City Council. So there is a process in place for that. So, those are my sort of general comments on the tree ordinance.
So I had a couple questions. Like, first of all, if I wanted to remove a tree to put up a solar array on my roof because the tree was obscuring the sun, I can't do it, right? There's no way to do it the way we have this written today, because I'm not going to ask for a review by the Planning Commission. Don't need that. I just need a building permit. So I can't do that. So let me give you some numbers just for fun, just so you'll know how this works out. If the average tree absorbs about 10 kilograms a year of carbon dioxide, and if I run my typical refrigerator for 20 days, that's 10 kilograms of CO2 that's generated. If I eliminate the electricity by fossil fuels and put a solar panel up, in 20 days, I'm now neutral with that tree in terms of carbon generation. Carbon addition. So like the whole argument of trees reducing carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is nice, but it's a little academic in my opinion. And we sprinkle that in this ordinance, which I think is a little bit disingenuous because I can't get rid of a tree to put up a solar array which will stop emitting CO2. That's one thing. The other thing that confuses the heck out of me is this community forest program within community tree and forest management account. I searched the website trying to find this account. I couldn't find anything. So we either don't have it or it's there and it's hidden, or
We do have it, and I think it has a fair amount of money.
how much does it have in it and where do I find it?
We have it, and we're updating the report. We do, it's like the AB 1600 report. That would be on the finance page. And we're updating it right now, so it should be published. I think it has to be published by December 20th. And
How
then,
does money flow in and how does money flow out of that account?
so it's utilized for tree plantings within the city, and as well as some maintenance of city properties like related to trees. So
I think the way it's
Yeah.
currently written, it's for trees on public property.
on public property and maintenance.
My thing is, I would like us to consider using some of that money. You know, if there's a significant tree we want to save, but it happens to be on private property, we come up with some mechanism of, you know, working with the property owner and helping them pay to maintain that tree for the community.
So
I
how
saw
does
that
the,
in there, that there was, you could use that fund for private property. Is it just on public?
no, I don't think so.
We just use it on public property right now. That's how it's been utilized.
I think the way it's worded is public only, but what's the source of revenue for the fund? Where does the money
So
come from?
it's,
lieu fees.
it's an in lieu fee. So one example, so typically when we get the in lieu fee, it's from like when PG&E came in and ran the gas line. So at that point, they don't have land in which to plant. So we've taken $600 per tree, and it becomes a sizable amount of money. So I want to say right now we have somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000 in that fund, and we have used it.
There's more than that in there.
You know, I think we did some replantings on the lower parking lot recently, and there's been some cleanup. Like I think in Perry Park, there was some of the funding for George's work comes out of that. But I believe, because we've been working on the 1600 report, I want to say it's right around 30,000.
The Environmental Commission's been trying to tap into that fund for as long as I've been on the Environmental Commission, and it's very, very restrictive. And so, you know, you can't use it for riparian activities. There's so many things you can't use it for. So it's, you know.
We've used it
tweaking
for the
that
tree
code.
giveaways, but that doesn't come at a very big expense. That's about $2,500. So
Other jurisdictions, other cities have a similar fund, but the revenue is primarily from private people that want to cut down trees for, like my solar array example.
Right.
And then they pay fees for that.
And some mitigation.
We don't have that, right?
Right.
There's no way we can do that
Currently.
in the current, yeah. Okay. That I think we need to change.
Yeah, so that's my whole thing. It's like, so what, you know, what's the purpose of saving the tree? Well, we want a healthy canopy. We want clean air. We want, you know, native birds and insects and wildlife, you know, and we want beautiful trees that, so you can do that as long as you have a mitigation plan. So you take down one tree and you say, okay, I will get rid of this ugly whatever tree, eucalyptus, palm tree. I'll plant 2 native whatever. But you can't do that now because you're not allowed to do that unless you have an arborist report and you go through all this. It's got to show it's disease or creating damage. And I don't know if you guys, I wrote that letter kind of arguing for just that one section, having an opportunity to remove a tree just because you want to, as long as you have those mitigation steps. And so I think, you know, I don't need to wait until, you know, we've been trying to get that tree ordinance. As long as I've known you, I think one of the first things I've mentioned talking to the senior staff is, when are we going to fix this tree ordinance because of the Heritage Tree Program, which makes absolutely no sense the way it's written. And it's always been on the agenda, and it's always been pushed back because, granted, it's the higher priorities always come up. But you could take it piece by piece. You could say, well, let's just put a couple of words in terms of mitigation for tree removal. So as long as you have maintain your canopy coverage, or you have maybe just you're putting in solar panels or something other than I'm sorry, it's a healthy tree. The arborist says it's good. You can't take it down. Now I've been an advocate for saving trees ever since I've been on the Environmental Commission. It was a commissioner at the then time, Commissioner Ruth and I were the only ones who tried to save the canary pines, to try big redwood tree on in the jewel box. But the fact of the matter is that as long as there's a mitigation plan, we should consider that.
I do think trees are very important to the community. I mean, having lived here a long time, having been to a lot of planning commission meetings, I think that, it is an important, issue and topic in the community itself to preserve the trees, keep the trees. I mean, even trying to remove the trees on Park Avenue, which are, the ones coming out are clearly dangerous and need to come out. There are people who argue, oh, we shouldn't be taking those trees out or so many trees. So, to do a good job on the tree ordinance, just like, on other things, I do think we're going to have to make certain that we hear from the community and get some public input about, what does the community value, in this area. And different communities look at it different ways. Having worked in a number of different cities, some cities will let anybody just take out any tree they want to, and there's no regulations. Some places like Carmel, or they have a whole tree department. Last time I checked, I think they had 4 full-time employees who worked on trees in Carmel. So there's a wide spectrum. So. Like all other things, I think we owe it to the community to sort of hear what they have to say too about the tree ordinance.
Also, somewhere I saw that we have a Capitola preferred tree list. Does that exist?
It does. And there's some trees on there which I would take off that list if I had a chance, because I don't think they're trees, they're bushes.
Where do you find it?
It's on the city's website, I believe.
On the website?
Huh?
It's on the city's website. It is on the city's website.
It is, okay. I used the search engine on the site and couldn't find it, but okay, I'll keep digging. Maybe use ChatGPT or something.
I don't know how this applies exactly, but within the scope of developing 41st Avenue and the mall project, heavily influencing the business owners along that corridor to establish more tree and landscape along the road. I don't know if it's relevant to tonight's discussion, but just having that as a item of like emphasized principle, just as that whole development progresses, I would be in favor of that. I don't know if anybody else cares.
So we're right now we have an RFQ out for the corridor, 41st Avenue corridor plan. And I think that will be an outcome because we're asking for more placemaking within the corridor plan. So my desire there would be that the product that we get at the end would suggest specific trees to the 41st Avenue corridor to improve it.
Yeah.
And to make a better sense of place. But
Yeah.
I think our current tree ordinance does talk about kind of assigning different trees to different neighborhoods. And so that's where that could be applied within redevelopment. It's a great example.
Yeah,
So.
like sectioning off and really emphasizing that not just in the center median, but like all along the businesses and stuff really. I think the laundromat just really got under my skin. And I just cannot, every time I drive by, I'm like, the place needs trees. So,
And there used to be design standards for 41st Avenue, which no longer apply, that did, they had really good standards for trees. So that's something we could actually bring back in within our, next time we look at the objective standards. So.
thank you.
So could you bring up that slide where you talked about what the planning commission can do with regards to tree removal? 'Cause it says as part of development, you're allowed to, yeah, tree removal due to development. So if we were just to remove the words due to development, I mean, you can just change the code to just say, yeah, planning commission is allowed to review tree removal independent of whether or not it's part of a redesign or part of a whole development. We'll just review it based on canopy coverage, landscape, age of the tree, all those things, and make a judgment as to whether or not this person should be able to remove their tree. Why should it be part of a development project? Why can't it stand alone as, let's get rid of this tree? And we could either say, no, we think it's a heritage tree or a significant tree or whatever. We could make that decision as commissioners. But I don't think that due to development part needs to be part of the conditions for us to review a tree removal.
How many properties have eucalyptus trees on them? That's why I don't think we want to approve every one of those things. You're going to have a deluge of people wanting to remove trees. At least initially.
Well, and if the commission or the community at large gives the commission guidance that, no, we want to keep eucalyptus trees, although I'm not sure why, then that would be part of the planning commission's consideration. Yeah, I mean, have someone come in and say, I've got this horrible eucalyptus tree. I'd like to replace it with a Monterey pine, which is a native tree. May I do that? Right now, we can't even consider that.
I think that, I could be wrong, correct me if I am, but the way the tree removal process works right now is that you can apply, you get turned down to take away your tree, then you can appeal that decision that staff has made to the planning commission to remove the tree.
Correct.
Isn't that
So right now, anyone could bring a tree to the planning commission if they want to. You want to put up your solar system, you apply to take down the tree, because it doesn't meet the criteria for staff to approve you taking down your tree, they deny it. You do have a right to appeal that decision to the planning commission right now.
Didn't we just do that on the last project, like the one on Riverview, right? Because that came to us as a tree removal, right?
I think the missing piece here perhaps is that today it would still need to be reviewed under one of the good cause findings for removal, as opposed to what Commissioner Wilk has talked about being just utilizing a mitigation regardless of the reasons for wanting those trees removed. So yes, it can go before the Planning Commission today, and we had one at the last meeting, but we were reviewing that under the findings for removal as opposed to what they would do as a mitigation.
Yeah, and the criteria always are, is it doing damage? So the staff requires an arborist report. Is it doing damage? Is it a healthy tree? Is it about to fall down? Is it ripping up sewer lines? Those are the criteria. Do they have to be the criteria? Again, why can't you take it down for other reasons? That it's a eucalyptus tree and you want to replace it with a native tree, for example, or there could be, you name it. There's a lot of reasons. So, and then when it comes before the Planning Commission, you have to review it along those same lines. You can't just say, well, of course, the Planning Commission has a lot more leeway, but generally you're supposed to review it along using the same criteria. So I'm suggesting that it doesn't have to be a safety hazard. You could remove a tree for other reasons as long as you have a decent mitigation plan. And again, I think the city does that all the time. I mean, yeah, they raise the sidewalks, and oh my gosh, the sidewalks are being raised. We got to get rid of the canary pines. We got to get rid of the tree in front of the city hall. Well, you shave down the sidewalk. Anybody who walks down a tree-lined street in any neighborhood sees the sidewalk buckling and all the attempts to do, you shade the sidewalk down to make it ADA compliant. So that's a lame excuse, I think, for the city to lean on to remove trees, because really they have other reasons they want to remove them, right? So, they use that as a dodge, and I think a lot of people will use that as a dodge. Well, why have that dodge? Why not just say, I have a legitimate reason and it's not safety for wanting to remove this tree. Will you hear my case? I've got a great mitigation plan.
I must be missing. Isn't that what we just went through at the last meeting? That it came forward, there wasn't any development part of the project. It was taking down the tree because it could have been a safety issue. There was an arborist report that said the tree was in healthy condition, and it came to us, and it was denied. So they came back with a project. Now this shows why this.
And the argument was because it wasn't part of a development plan.
But he clearly said he just wanted to take the tree out so he could design a development plan.
In the
And we
future.
have a process for it to come in with a development plan. I mean, for me, I was always willing to have him take out the tree. It's just they were, in my opinion, putting the cart before the horse with how they were trying to work the permit system. But it was, I think it's pretty obvious that you were going to be so limited on any kind of development on that property without removing the tree that, it would ultimately get to come out. But
So
that was a process problem for me.
in that example, if they came and said, I want to remove the tree to get more sunlight on my house, we'd turn it down?
Without a mitigation.
Well, I think it would depend on the circumstance. I'll have to go back and look at this. I thought we've had something somewhere that talked about, taking out trees for solar access.
There's
within
words
the-
in the goals.
Yeah, within the purpose statement or the goals. So I think, and solar array would count as development, but it would just, typically you would not, an installation for solar would not come to planning commission, but with a tree permit, it could.
Yeah.
That's how I would view that, is that it's in the purpose statements. We could bring it forward as part of it underneath development. But it does sound like we have work to do. And I just want to make sure, are there any other topics tied to trees? Because I think there have been a lot of great points, but any other items?
To Susan's point about heritage trees, since we're moving along to everything, I thought I heard you say to remove it. I don't think we should remove it. I think it should be reviewed. I think we could actually make a list of heritage trees or significant trees that we want, put them on a heritage list, and say, we would be willing to, fund, like you were saying, fund the resident or the owner, help them with the maintenance of it, because we consider that a significant tree. I consider that as the heritage tree program.
Right. I just don't think we ought to have a heritage tree program if we're not going to have the time or staff to have a heritage tree program. Why write an ordinance that includes components that realistically you don't have the resources to do? And unless the city's going to change and, sort of hire a full-time tree person, I don't see some of that happening.
So I want to go back to Jerry's first question, which was, Katie, how will you utilize the comments tonight? And after having this discussion, I think what we would do is, with the Planning Commission at the time of updating the ordinance, the subjects that you've brought up tonight would be the beginning of an issues and options paper regarding this chapter, and outlining the issues, which one would be the heritage trees. And then we would provide options, which would include options that we've heard tonight and other options that a consultant who specializes in trees would help draft. So I think that's what would be the next step for this once we're ready to proceed with an update.
I completely understand staff's comments about what the calendar looks like for next year, but then being sympathizing with Commissioner Wilkes with the 6 years or 7 years that he's been looking at. Could it be something that could be a goal that it can be looked at? over the next planning commission. So they have a 2-year term that it would then be brought forward to that commission as like a timeline frame so that it's at least calendared over the next 24 months. Would that be something that you would feel comfortable at identifying for that?
Definitely. So I think in prioritizing our goals, so we do this kind of at the council level too, with tied to the budget. So it's something that I can put on our at mid-year budget or at the beginning of next year's budget, and it will be something that we look at. So right now, the items that we've been prioritizing at the city council has been the housing element implementation, but I think within 2 years, it sounds reasonable because we're at the beginning of our 8-year cycle.
Thank you.
I appreciate the discussion.
Yes, thank you.
Just since you're on the environmental committee, the fruit trees are kind of exempt from all this stuff. What's the rationale for that?
I don't know, but thank goodness, because I just cut down a massive fruit tree.
They're messy.
Some of them will live a lot longer, but I believe that was the rationale years ago.
Any additional comments? Questions? Okay. Do you have anything to add?
Director's report?
Director's report? Okay, let's go.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to item 7, director's report. Keith?
Okay. Planning Commission tonight, I have a year in review, some slides for you. And before we go there, first I'd like to congratulate Commissioner Jensen, moving on up to the City Council next year, and we wish you well in your new position and role within the City of Capitola. And I want to thank all of you for just a tremendous year. You've put so much time into the Planning Commission, and it really shows. And as I was developing this presentation, it's great to look back and just reflect on how much we was completed together. And really, at every meeting, you give 100%, and it shows in the end product. So thank you. And with that, I'll go through these slides pretty quick, but there's quite a few. So beginning of the year started off a little rough. If you could click. We got our letter of denial from the HCD on our housing element. I think that was January 12th. So moving on to the next slide. At the meeting a couple days later, we approved 2 single-family homes. Next slide. The building permit for 4401 Capitola Avenue was issued in January. So 36 affordable units, 100% affordable project on 41st Avenue, which is now under construction. In February, after receiving HCD comments that they needed a bigger commitment from the city on height and floor area ratio at the mall, we brought this to Planning Commission, and you gave your support for moving forward with 75 feet in height and FAR. In February, we had our second study session, special meeting, and just started to look at that missing middle and what that means, and we added a lot of new terms to our vocabulary. In March, 3 more single-family homes, and then also the wharf project. So a lot of time and energy was put into this project by all 5 of you, and the amazing product at the end. Every time I walk out there, it's a special experience. But in March, we came to the Planning Commission to look at the final details of the wharf enhancement. Next slide, please. And then we had another special meeting in March to talk about including all of the sites at the mall because we had to get our numbers higher. So next slide, please. And so as you can see at the top of the slide, originally we had just included the Merlone-Geyer properties, and then during that, in March, we added the rest of the properties within the entire mall site. Next slide. And then we had a special meeting again in March for the wharf enhancements to really commit to what the final design was going to be. So here we are with the image and the different images of the options that we went through of where should the panels be, the recognition panels, and the final bathroom design and the benches. And next slide, please. And then in April, 1098 38th Avenue is approved, the 52 unit, 100% affordable project. I want to give kudos to Brian here. That was a lot of work done up front. This project, typically you see projects like this get appealed. It was not appealed. It went through one meeting at the Planning Commission, which is seldom heard of. So it's a lot of great preparation. And then the Planning Commission just thorough review and adding a few conditions, and they're now entitled for their project. So next slide, please. Also in April, there was the land swap up at New Brighton, the new relocation of the hook, and then we launched B-Cycle. I wish that's coming back. It's going to be better, but they're making the lock stronger now, and the bicycles should be in action by next year. In May, another 2 single-family homes, and then the Hop Shop opened up, or was given permits down at the Mercantile. In June, we had more discussions tied around the housing element implementation, so really getting into multifamily. We had some training on builder's remedy, and then, just really brainstorming multifamily, what we're going to do with it in the future. And then in June, we got another letter from the HCD with another 7 items that they wanted us to update. So back to the drawing board. July, the 720 Hill subdivision for the hotel. So we're hoping to see that move forward. Right now it's, I think, with sanitation, but should be moving the building permit we're hoping to issue soon. And then another new single-family home. Escalona had a busy year, a lot of projects up on Escalona. And then the master sign program, which you took time with to make it a better project, and 604 Escalona. July, another group of new terms that are added to our housing element and our zoning code. So again, now kudos on to Sean. These are many meetings of updating the zoning code, and Sean's first year of really playing a lead part in that, and did a great job. So July, if you can go click to the next one. We finally got the positive message that we're in compliance and just had to move forward with our adoption hearings. Next slide, please. And so in August, we moved forward with our adoption hearing. Next slide. And there was also another single-family home. In August, more public hearings on the housing element implementation, so more work within the zoning code update. And at that point, we had a lot of people come out to discuss where the multifamily zone, and that we will be bringing back in 2025 as a priority. September, there were 2 special meetings, all based on the housing element implementation, so a lot more great discussions. I would like to say on that last slide, we also trying to, with the office space and the changes to cannabis regulations, just trying to support our local businesses through our zoning code and updates, and I think that's going to be a big focus in the future as well. So October, most recent meetings of 510 Escalona, grocery outlet coming in, and then 709 Riverview, which is approved tonight. So all, in October and November, we adopted the zoning code, and these are just a lot of the terms that are now new within our zoning code. And just what we're seeing on the ground. So 4401 Capitola Road, the 36 units, it's really coming along. It has a very nice presence from the street. This is looking from 44th into the project. New Leaf had their grand opening a couple weeks back. It's a great store. It's absolutely beautiful. And then the Capitola Wharf, which, Courtney, congratulations on a fantastic design. And the Planning Commission, that's just to bring it all together, that was a lot of work by all of you in the room. So I think that's my final slide for the WIA. So If you could go back to the one slide, I do, Courtney, we'd like to recognize you as the chair this year, and you've done a fantastic job, and we really appreciate all your hard work. It was not an easy year, and you brought us all through, and appreciate you. Thank you.
I've had a really, really great time doing it. And it's been a really, really fun, it's been a really great team, and I've really enjoyed meeting you all and working with you all, honestly. And Peter, this has been a wonderful 6 years. Rotating, but thank you very, very much. And staff, it's been wonderful. And the Capitola work was really great. It's really fun. Yeah, that was.
Mhm.
Yes, 100%. Jerry and everybody.
Yeah, I think I agree. I mean, getting the housing element passed is actually pretty impressive because a lot of them have really flunked out badly. And we did actually pretty well overall. And I really do appreciate the staff and all that they've done in getting us through that whole process because it's not easy. And obviously we're not done. We got a lot more to go. And thank you, Courtney. I think you did a great job on this and on the wharf. I think the wharf is just, it's a jewel. It's great.
Just one thing, I just wanted to make sure we recognize that we always look this way as staff, but I wanted to thank Rosie and also Julia and Austin, who's not here anymore. I mean, you kind of took all our thoughts and put them all together, and we appreciate that and documented that. So thank you.
Keeping us on the straight and
Yeah.
narrow. We're hard
Forever.
to keep on the straight and
Forever.
narrow.
Yeah, we're adjourned.
We're adjourned.
I just wanted to check, what about the strategic plan notice?
Oh, so thank you, Julia. So I reached out to each of you regarding the strategic plan survey, and I appreciate you getting these done before our meeting. So I have them all in hand. I have your completed survey. This, the city council wanted to make sure that all the boards and commissions fill out the survey. So appreciate your comments here, and I will give them to Chloe.
It will be noted, though, that we were interviewed, and then there's also a survey done, so
Yep.
it's like double input, kind of.
Yep. So appreciate your time dedicated to that.
And just really briefly, Director Hurley, if I could just make a comment. So for those of you who aren't aware, though most of you have reapplied, so the Planning Commission appointments will take place on December 12th at the City Council meeting. It'll be a regular agenda item. The new City Council will make their appointments known at that meeting. And then the next Planning Commission meeting is planned for January 16th. It will be a joint special meeting with the City Council. It'll be an onboarding and training meeting where the council members and planning commissioners can attend to learn about the Brown Act, the Public Records Act, and other really relevant and pertinent information to becoming a Brown Act commissioner. So just keep that date in mind, and all applicants will be advised of next steps following the December 12th City Council meeting.
And one additional date to keep in mind. So the 16th is the joint training meeting to keep in mind. And then January 21st, is that correct? 22nd, the Wednesday, following Wednesday will be our first Planning Commission meeting of the year because of the conflict with, well, we usually have it on the third Thursday. We're going to have training then, so the 22nd. And then we'll all be trained and run great meetings. So
Is it true next Thursday at the council meeting there, that's the swearing in or no, it's not. That's not till January.
So for the City Council members, they will be sworn in on December 12th. The meeting will begin at 5:30. And it's a elections business will happen at the beginning part of the meeting. We'll say goodbye to our outgoing council members. We'll swear in our new council members. And then the meeting will officially start and the new council will take their seats and act on the later half of the meeting. The planning commissioners will be sworn in at their meeting in January, not at the 16th meeting, but at this 22nd.
Thank you. That's exciting, Jerry. That's great. Okay. All right. Okay, thank you. We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.